Now, for more on these latest developments, we have with us Dr. Jung-yeop, a research fellow from the Sejong Institute in Seoul. It's good to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me today.
So, previous speculation was that the Pompeo Kim Jong-chol meeting would take place this week, but it now seems is not happening. I mean, what do we know so far, and are you surprised at all by this development?
So, as you just said, it was a rumor that when they had planned to have a meeting on November 8th, as we all know that the Secretary Pompeo mentioned about the possibility of having meetings with his counterpart, like week and a half later or next week. So he kept mentioning about the possible timing of the meetings. But this time, no government officials in either country has ever mentioned about the possibility of a meeting this week. So I think it was basically a rumor that the Secretary Pompeo and the Kim Jong-un is going to meet this week. So now we don't know yet what was the reason in the first place that their first meeting was cancelled on November 8th, even though the official reason was because of the schedule conflict, but we don't know yet what exactly is the reason behind it. So we have to see what is there that makes it difficult for them to meet again. And as you mentioned, that now it's going to be December if the meeting is going to take place. So we have to see whether they can meet in early December or not.
I mean, it is quite frustrating for those people, for us on the sidelines, to be watching this, because we really don't know why North Korea seems to be delaying and postponing this meeting. I mean, in that last report, Dr. Bong, who's also a regular on this show as well, he suggested that North Korea don't want talks with Pompeo and they want direct talks with President Trump himself. Do you agree with that sentiment, and do you think that's even realistic?
So for North Korea to have a summit between President Trump and the Chairman Kim, that they knew that they have to go through Secretary Pompeo. But the problem is that now the approach by the United States is different from how they approached it in the early half of this year. In the early half of this year, the U.S. approach was like that. It is meaningful to have a summit no matter what. But after the first summit, that now U.S. government think that it is necessary to have a working level talks to have a fruitful summit and to make a good result out of the summit. So now U.S. government demanded North Korea to accept that working level talks should be going ahead before summit taking place. So probably U.S. is demanding North Korea to accept that U.S. approach, while North Korea, as Dr. Bong mentioned, that while North Korea prefers to have summit instead of working level talks, that is why two sides has not reconciled their differences yet. I think that might be the reason why it's difficult for them to agree on the date for the high-level talks.
While they have this impasse, before they can't seem to sort out how they're going to get to this next level of talks. I mean, the concern is they can't reach some sort of agreement over the denuclearization. I mean, if they can't reach any sort of deal through denuclearization, that means North Korea is still producing its nuclear weapons, continuing its nuclear program. Should we be concerned at the fact that there is no progress so far? So
the reason why U.S. government raised the concerns of having a summit, a second summit this time, was that because in the first summit, they fixed the date first, and then working level negotiation follow after the date was fixed. So even if North Korea did not comply with the U.S. demand in the working level talks, the summit is going to take place anyway. So now the U.S. approach is that they have to develop a meaningful progress at the working level talks. So the second summit should be the kind of like ceremony that delivers the fruitful outcome of the negotiations. So now North Korea believes that a summit might be the best way for them to achieve their achieve their own interest, while now the Secretary Pompeo and the U.S. government believes that the working level negotiation should go first before the summit. So I think that if they agree on to have working level negotiations before the summit, then I believe that there was some progress between North Korea and the United States with regard to the denuclearization negotiations.
There's been a couple of developments over the last couple of weeks. So, for example, the U.S. and the international community has allowed the inspections of the Inter-Korean Railway project to go ahead, and offering special waivers on the North Korean sanctions as well while they're at it. The U.S. then also last week as well promised it would scale down its annual military drills in the spring, the Fall Eagle exercises, and scale it down, to help with diplomatic negotiations as well. These all seem like concessions that the U.S. and the international community are making to the North Korea to possibly try to get them back to the negotiating table. But North Korea don't seem to be interested. Do you think it's not enough for North Korea?
So first, with regard to the military exercises, President Trump mentioned after the summit June this year that while the talks continues, he's going to suspend all the military exercises. So I think that the reason why the Secretary of Defense mentioned about scaling down, it's different from suspension of the military drills. So scale down still means that there's going to be a military drills, but suspension means that there would be temporarily no military drills between U.S. and South Korean military. So I think that it's both a carrot and a stick, that unless North Korea is cooperating with the United States, there's a room for United States to maneuver, so they can actually resume the military drills again. So it can be a pressure to North Korea. At the same time, that since Secretary Mattis mentioned that there's a possibility of suspension, so it also can be a carrot. And for the waiver of the UN Security Council, that it exempt sanctions from the survey of the railroad project. It does not mean that we get comprehensive exemption from the UN Security Council with regard to the railroad project. So now we have a working group between South Korea and the United States with regard to the possible violation of sanctions and North and South economic project. This is the one good example that South Korea and the U.S. can talk before any negative things can happen between two allies, and at the same time that there might be some limitations that U.S. put on while they agree to give exemptions to the sanctions. So I think we have to see, but from the North Korean side, that it is still unclear what makes it very difficult for North Korea to come to the discussion again with the United States.
By having these talks delayed, it seems to delay everything else as well. There's a knock-on effect, a domino effect to the other talks. For example, the U.S.-North Korea summit between Kim and Trump, as well as other inter-Korean projects as well, such as the possible Kim Jong-un's visit to Seoul as well, which they promised back in September. I mean, so these knock-on effects, I mean, are we going to see a delay in all these future negotiations and events?
So when our president and the Chairman Kim agreed that Chairman Kim was going to visit Seoul within this year, they said that in September Pyeongyang summit. And the reason why they could announce that Kim Jong-un would visit Seoul within this year was that there was some prospect of progress between U.S. and North Korea. But as the progress is not actually happening, everything is very difficult to move ahead. So I think that for Chairman Kim to come to Seoul, he needs to get something out of the trip to show his people in North Korea. But without any progress with the United States, he cannot get any sanctions relief or the easing the sanctions, or there's no progress in terms of a declaration of end to Korean War or like peace treaty. So even if Chairman Kim can visit South Korea, there is nothing tangible for him to get out of his trip. So I think that the North Korea and the U.S. Negotiation it's not the prerequisite for the Kim Jong-un's trip to Seoul, but it has very important role in making these summit between two Koreas and the visit by Kim Jong-un to Seoul possible. So I think that we have to see about like 1 to 3 weeks what kind of progress can be made between U.S. and North Korea.
We can pretty much calculate that Pompeo won't be holding this meeting because we know he's going to Argentina with President Trump for the G20 summit. And of course, also there will be President Moon Jae-in of South Korea. Now, there is a talk that President Moon could meet with President Trump as a sideline summit to the G20 as well. Do you think it'll happen? And do you think they have enough to talk about on North Korea?
So the first problem is that President Trump probably is going to stay there less than 20 hours. And the G20 is different from UN Security Council meetings and UN General Assembly meetings. The G20 is more about economy of US and other advanced economies in the world. And they are now going through a lot of troubles with regard to trade and economic systems. So maybe other countries are trying to gang up against President Trump about US trade policies. So I think that President Trump had to deal with them first at G20. So I don't know whether he can find some time to meet with our president this time and even talk about North Korean issues in depth. So I think that our government is trying to meet many leaders on the sidelines of this G20, but the purpose of the meeting at G20 is very different. So I think there's certain limitations that we have to acknowledge.
Yes, there's a lot of things on President Trump's plate for this G20 summit. There are talks that he will be meeting with President Putin and President Xi Jinping of China. And of course, he has many things to talk to them about. But do you think he will make time to possibly discuss North Korea? Or do you think that will have to take a backseat this time?
So if he could find some time to meet our president, he probably know that the North Korea should be the main issue between President Moon and him. So I think that if there's some time that he can squeeze in his schedule, then I think that he's going to discuss with the President Moon about North Korean issues, and President Moon can take advantage of that opportunity to pursue President Trump that the second summit between Trump and Kim is very important in terms of the denuclearization negotiation with North Korea.
But what about, do you think, with Trump and Xi Jinping and Putin, do you think North Korea will come up there at all?
I think that with China, the trade issue is so urgent between two countries, and Trump administration is announcing that its tariff policy against China, and it's urging China to change its policy with its trade to the United States. So I think that the trade policy is the main issue for U.S. to talk with China. And with Russia, there are a lot of things that Trump government already have troubles with Russia, including its INF treaty about the security issues. So I think that they can discuss some part of North Korean issues, but again, the time is so limited this time, so I think that it cannot be a extended discussion among the leaders this time.
Yes, I think timing for the North Korea issue might not be best, but we'll have to see whether this high-level talks between Pompeo and Kim Yong-chol happen next month, or whether it be delayed further. Anyway, that's what we have time for. Thank you for your time and your take on all these latest developments.
Thank you very much.